An important congressional letter is circulating calling for freedom for Dr. Abu Safiya.
Those passive chatbots that just sit there and answer the questions, that's so yesterday. What we're talking about now are AI systems that also have goals on their own that they can actively go out and pursue in the world. This agent that OpenAI had launched internally, it spent 4.5 days trying to accomplish this task. And eventually it figured out that the best way it could do it was if it first hacked its way out of OpenAI onto the open internet, and then it figured out how to hack itself into 4 other entities, including this company Hugging Face.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to the Struggle Video News. An important congressional letter is circulating calling for freedom for Dr. Abu Safiya. It was started by mainstream Democratic leader Jamie Raskin of Maryland. You can see the letter and the first signers at freedoctorabusafiya.org. 2 of Connecticut's 5 members of Congress are among the signers, as is Ro Khanna, a California congressman just back from a fact-finding trip to the West Bank, where he was detained for some time by Israeli vigilantes, sometimes called settlers. This is an auspicious time for you to contact your member of Congress and ask them to join Raskin and Khanna and the others in that letter. Scan this QR code to see the letter and the signers. The British newspaper The Guardian covered a high-level land warfare conference in England. It was addressed by an Israeli military reservist who is now an Elbit executive. He boasted that his company's program identified 850,000 targets in the first 2 years of Israel's war on Gaza. Quote, Elbit Systems supplied Sayad digital army program to map people, vehicles, and other objects in real time. Israel identified about 1,000 potential targets a day during the first 2 years of the war in Gaza and Lebanon. A total of 850,000 targets were detected in real time by the Israeli Sayad digital army program across all the military theaters of war between the 7th of October and the end of 2025, unquote. A U.S. Army expert estimated that this meant that humans could take on no more than 10 seconds to judge whether a target should be obliterated or not. Elbit is the chief military company of Israel. The Connecticut Treasury has $2 million of worker pension fund invested in Elbit. August 6, 1945 was the day that the U.S. dropped an atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. A program is arranged in Hartford on August 6th of this year. Back from the Brink and other groups are sponsoring it. Here's part of my interview with Jill Friedman about the upcoming event. It's July 31st, 2026. I'll be speaking to Jill Friedman, a longtime activist, a retired special education teacher, and singer. She's active with Back from the Brink and also with Mayors for Peace. There's an event coming up Thursday, August 6th in West Hartford, a Hiroshima Nagasaki remembrance, a shared call for nuclear weapons abolition. And we'll talk about the event and other matters. Good afternoon, Jill.
Stanley, how are you?
Good. Tell a little about the group Back from the Brink.
Oh, Back from the Brink is well, given the geopolitical instability that's threatening the world right now, and that the tensions are rising on a global level, um, Back from the Brink grew out of the need to have the voices of the people heard in a more significant way than a few voices here and a few voices there. And it is a grassroots organization that grew out of, I believe, Physicians for Social Responsibility. And it's been very exciting because I think there are 77 US municipalities and 8 legislative bodies that are supporting the movement right now and growing. So things
And
are
its
happening.
the chief concern is nuclear weapons and war.
Yes, that's the chief concern. Should be everyone's concern at this point, especially, as I said, given the global situation right now. But the most extreme example of power consolidated into the hands of a small number of people. Um, it's just amazing how countries have wielded against all of humanity, present and future. And I have grandkids and kids, and we all have a future, and we're living in the present, but preventing nuclear war, being able to abolish nuclear weapons for all of us for the rest of the world's existence is primary. The other things that we fight for in terms of climate change, homelessness, all the other issues that we fight for, um, the immigration issues, none of it seems as important as this to me, only because if we don't exist, those won't be issues.
Mhm.
And so I decided to put my energy here.
So tell us some details about the program on Thursday, the 6th.
Oh, it's going to be great. Long time ago, I sang with a group called Bread and Roses, and this program was going on way back then. And several years in a row, Bread and Roses sang as a part of the program. But it's a remembrance, and it's a remembrance of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and it is a call for nuclear abolition, weapons abolition. And there's going to be poetry. Mayor Bobby Sanchez, who is absolutely fabulous from New Britain. He's our new mayor, Democratic mayor. Ian Fay, who's a musician, is going to be singing. Joe Wasserman will be giving more information on Back from the Brink. David Roberts, who is the UN Associate of Connecticut. Eric Stam, who is one of the head I was going to use the Yiddish word machas, one of the head power forces in Back from the Brink, and is a Quaker, a lifelong Quaker. And my band Wish, which is WHISH, the sound the wind makes when it blows through the trees, the Wish band. Um, Plus a couple of my friends. We're doing some Pete Seeger songs, so we couldn't do it without a banjo. So I invited a banjo player to come in and do music with us as well. And it'll be audience participation. And I think it's going to be a beautiful program.
Okay, and that's 7 o'clock in the Quaker Meeting House, is that right?
Yes, it's 144 South Quaker Lane in West Hartford. And if someone's planning on going, if you go down Maplewood Avenue, the next street over, there's a parking lot that has a back entrance right into, it's a little bit bigger parking place. And you can see that there's a way to get right into the Quaker Meeting House from there. It's pretty easy.
How long ago did you first learn about nuclear weapons?
Oh gosh, I'm going to definitely show my age here. It was back with the Clamshell Alliance. When was that, Stanley? Do you remember?
Um,
Um, It was the 70s. I know
The
that.
70s, I'd say, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not sure exactly what year. But I had first I'm 70 years old now. And in the 70s, I was a teenager and I was doing anti-war stuff, the anti-Vietnam War stuff, and wanting to learn about what was going on and going down to Hartford's Bushnell Park to rallies. And I was approached by somebody who told me about the Clamshell Alliance and about this big protest up in Seabrook, New Hampshire. And I went up there where they had a nuclear power plant. And I went up on an old school bus that we weren't sure we were going to make it or not,
Mhm.
and saw what protests can do. And some people got arrested. I know that I wasn't old enough to be arrested or to be held. I think I was about 16 years old at the time. And yeah, that would make sense with the timeline. And I just kind of caught the bug of what the power of the people can do.
A few days ago, Democracy Now! Featured a section on its program with an expert on AI. It came about because a prediction came true. The prediction that AI would sooner or later go rogue. That is, would do things not called upon by its creator. It was learned recently that a program went off on its own and secretly hacked into the infrastructure of several other companies in what was supposed to be a controlled test. Here are parts of that program.
OpenAI CEO Sam Altman is in Washington, D.C., meeting with lawmakers as concern grows over the power of the latest artificial intelligence models to evade or resist human oversight. Altman's trip to Capitol Hill comes just days after OpenAI admitted some of its experimental AI agents went rogue and secretly hacked into the infrastructure of another AI company called Hugging Face during what was supposed to be a controlled test. OpenAI has now disclosed that several other companies were also hacked. President Trump was questioned Wednesday about the hack and calls to increase regulations on AI firms.
When we're looking at AI, we're looking at controls. We're also making sure that we lead. So we're leading China in AI by a lot. China has virtually no controls. It's freewheeling a little bit. So we have to be careful in both ways. We don't want to restrict them, where all of a sudden we come in second to China. Whoever wins with AI is going to win. That's how big it is. So it's bigger than the internet ever was. It's bigger than anything ever was. So I don't want to restrict. I know many of these people. I don't want to restrict them from doing great work.
In related news, over 1,100 scientists and senior employees at top AI firms have called on the U.S. government to back international efforts to develop tools that can, quote, deliberately pace the development of the world's most advanced AI systems. Signatories to the letter include senior employees at Anthropic, Google, Meta, and OpenAI. The signers wrote, quote, to realize AI's potential, industry, government, and society at large may need the option to buy time to address emerging risks, develop security measures, and strengthen oversight.
We're joined now by Max Tegmark, professor conducting AI and physics research at MIT as part of the Institute for Artificial Intelligence and Fundamental Interactions, as well as at the Center for Brains, Minds, and Machines. He's also co-founder of Future of Life Institute, which advocates for the positive use of AI. He's the author of the New York Times bestseller, Life 3.0, Being Human in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. Well, we certainly want to ask you about how to be human in the age of artificial intelligence. But first, Professor Tegmark, let's begin with you explaining to a lay global audience what it means that this OpenAI rogue agent or agents broke out and autonomously attacked other companies' programs. What exactly does this mean?
So what this means exactly is that those passive chat bots that just sit there and answer the questions, that's so yesterday. What we're talking about now are AI systems that also have goals on their own that they can actively go out and pursue in the world. This agent that OpenAI had launched internally, it spent 4.5 days trying to accomplish this task. And eventually it figured out that the best way it could do it was if it first hacked its way out of OpenAI onto the open internet, and then it figured out how to hack itself into 4 other entities, including this company Hugging Face, where it managed to commandeer several different computer clusters and get top-level access to all sorts of things in there and steal a bunch of data from Hugging Face. And that means that we should no longer think of today's cutting-edge AI, again, as just the chatbots that everyone is familiar with, but really as an alien type of being that can have goals of its own and go out in the world and pursue them. And this incident in and of itself, of course, didn't cause any enormous harm. So we should think of it as a canary in the coal mine, because if you listen to what these companies are actually saying that they ultimately want to do, it's to build so-called superintelligence, which are machines that can accomplish any tasks way, way better than humans. And they also want to give them robotic bodies eventually. So Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, has written on a blog that we humans are going to be the first species to create our own successor, to build a new robotic species which can outsmart us in every way. And you played our president here talking about how whoever gets the super powerful AI first will win. Just speaking from my expertise as a scientist, an AI researcher, it's pretty obvious that if we race to this, then whoever builds something like that first will lose and take the rest of the world with them. Because, if you walk down to the local zoo and you ask yourself which species is in the cages and which one is in charge, right? It's not the humans in the cages, because it tends to be the smarter species that dominates. And this is why these AI researchers from all these competing companies wrote this letter you just mentioned, saying, oh, hold your horses here. Maybe we should at least build some brakes, so if we need to slow down a little bit, we can.
So, Professor Tegmark, if you could explain the difference between artificial general intelligence and whether you think that's already happened, and what kind of regulations you think would prevent superintelligence from beginning, starting to be what you've warned against. You've said, in fact, that AI is the only industry in the U.S. that's less regulated than sandwiches.
Yeah. So, of course, we've long had machines that have very narrow intelligence. My pocket calculator I had when I was 10 years old was much better at multiplying numbers than I'll ever be. And we have AI tools that are very good at translating between English and Japanese and still can't drive a car properly, etc. Artificial general intelligence is simply AI that can do everything as well as a well-educated human. We don't have it yet. With some colleagues, I was recently a co-author on a paper where we found that ChatGPT GPT-4 was 27% of the way there. The ChatGPT 5 was 57% of there. But the companies their leadership mostly predicts that we'll get there maybe this year, maybe next year, maybe in 2 years. Some think it won't happen for 5 years. But once that happens, we're at this crazy inflection point where the AI is better than any humans at the companies at making still better AI. So ChatGPT 7 would create ChatGPT 8, which would create ChatGPT 9, and so on at a crazy rapid pace. And then when you give these things robotic bodies, it's pretty obvious that if you have millions or billions of smarter than human robots running around the planet doing all sorts of things that we don't even understand, we might lose control over what's happening here on Earth.
So, Professor Tegmark, with respect to these robotic bodies, where are they already operating? We believe in China, certainly, despite the fact that China has much fewer data centers. The U.S. has something like 10 to 12 times more. What do you think is the future for robotic bodies, and what kind of work do you imagine they'll eventually do? And are they effectively inevitable?
When you go to San Francisco, we already have AI-controlled robots driving around in the form of Waymo self-driving cars, right? We shouldn't just think of robots with 2 arms and 2 legs. And Tesla and many other companies in America and China are working very hard to make robots cheaper and very ubiquitous. The reason people want to put 2 arms and 2 legs on robots is, of course, because only then can you replace all human workers, since our infrastructure is very much built for workers with 2 arms and 2 legs. That's where you can take the biggest profits by basically getting all the money that went to workers and paying it to the owners of these machines. But I think it's a mistake to ask what will happen, because that makes us seem so weak. Like we are just some passive bystanders, eating popcorn and waiting to see what future is going to happen to us. And we are creating this future, right? So we should ask ourselves what we want to happen. And I'm so glad you brought up the sandwich thing. If we wanted people in New York to worry about getting salmonella every time they go to a restaurant, then we would get rid of the food inspectors. But we've chosen as a society to steer the development in a better direction. So if I move to New York and decide to open a sandwich shop, when the health inspector comes and says, hey, Max, I found 18 rats in your kitchen, you're not selling any sandwiches, then I could turn around to this person from the government and say, don't tell anyone. I'm not going to sell any sandwiches. I'm just going to release an AI girlfriend product for 11-year-old kids, and I'm going to release an AI that can make bioweapons for terrorists, and I'm going to release these super intelligent robots that I don't know how to control. The poor person from the government will be forced to say, okay, Max, that's all legal. You go ahead and do that, but just don't sell any sandwiches, right? That's how messed up the current situation is. And the good news is that because it's so ridiculous, there's a rapidly growing coalition across the political spectrum, all the way from Bernie Sanders to people like Steve Bannon, on saying this is nuts. We need to treat AI companies like we would treat any other powerful companies, with saying, hey, we have these safety standards for sandwiches, for cars, for medicines. You can't release products until they've met the standards. That way, we would get a race to the top where companies can focus on curing cancer and other things instead of this absolutely insane, in my opinion, race to replace humans, not just as girlfriends and therapists and workers, but ultimately even in the big decisions that are being made about our future.
Professor,
the Trump administration has killed over 200 people on the high seas after declaring them drug smugglers. The administration hasn't produced any evidence, any proof that any of these people were carrying drugs. It calls them terrorists, thinking that way it can ignore U.S. and international law. What's pathetic is that these killings haven't even worked at stopping drugs from being brought into the U.S. The Washington Post article sub-headline here says it all. The president says Operation Southern Spear has virtually ended drug trafficking by sea. Pentagon and DEA analysts have concluded otherwise. In an editorial the next day, the Washington Post wrote, the military's anti-drug campaign accomplished nothing. Speaking of accomplishing nothing, do you know that alligator Alcatraz has been shut down? It opened in June of 2025. Politicians bragged about its brutality. The U.S. and the state of Florida spent $1 billion on it. It was very, very expensive. It cost $3,500 to imprison each detained immigrant in alligator Alcatraz. That's $3,500 a day. The federal government was supposed to pay back money to Florida. As of May, the New York Times reported, Florida has yet to receive the $608 million federal reimbursement it requested to run the center for about a year. Speaking of failure, an article in Bloomberg News compared Musk's Cybertruck to the infamous Ford Edsel. Tesla's annual sales target for the truck was 250,000 units, but it didn't even crack 40,000 sales in its first year. And like the Edsel, it sold less with each successive year. Barely 7,100 registered in the U.S. in 2026 so far. And this despite Musk helping the numbers out by buying Cybertrucks for another of his companies, SpaceX. Finally, the Trump administration is waving the anti-communist club again. A congressional committee that's supposed to work on taxes is using a subpoena as a political weapon. It is demanding the financial records of Breakthrough News, People's Forum, and the Tricontinental Institute for Social Research. Rubbish. There's supposed to be freedom of speech and freedom of press in this country. If that committee wants to investigate something, it should investigate how the billionaire class evades taxes. That's our program for today. I'm Stanley Heller for the Struggle Video News.